This is the 46 of 46 podcast summit session, where we'll talk all things Adirondack, backcountry, and beyond. From high peak stories and adventures to trail tips and tricks, we'll dive deep into the heart of these mountains and the people who passionately climb them. Adirondack maps and spruce traps to bushwhacks and backpacks. It's all here on the 46 of 46 summit sessions. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the 46 of 46 podcast. I hope you all enjoyed this year's October sessions. It was my fourth year in a row, hitting you with some spooky Adirondack fun for the month of October. I love those episodes. They're always a good time. But what comes after the October sessions every year is some hunting in the Adirondacks. It is the middle of the hunting season right now. It's the early November, just when everything's starting to kick up time of year. So as I am one to do, we're going to talk all about hunting in the Adirondacks today, and my guest today is an Adirondack native. He is an Adirondack hunting guide and has his own hunting guide service called LaBar Guide Service. His name is Wes LaBar. I first heard Wes's story on another podcast that I listened to, and I could tell just by talking to him how Adirondack this guy was, and I said, I have got to get him on the podcast. So without further ado, Wes LaBar, welcome to the 46 of 46 podcast.
Hey, thanks a lot, James. This is a pleasure. I remember you reaching out to me just after my podcast and started following your page after I saw your comment. And looks like you got a lot of neat stuff going on. You seem like a very interesting fellow yourself, and I'm looking forward to getting to know you more and maybe possibly in the future linking together for some fishing and hunting. So thanks for having me on your podcast, man. This is it's going to be fun.
Absolutely, dude. Anytime you want to go fishing, anytime you want to someone to come out there in the woods with you, I am game. I've seen the deer that you've got on your page for both your clients and yourself, and you are an absolute stud. So congrats on being able to get it done here in the Adirondack Park. Obviously, everybody knows that is a challenge and a half here in this place, and not just getting a deer, period. You have some monsters on your page, so kudos to you, and your skill set has obviously, improved by becoming an Adirondack hunter.
Yeah, man, thanks. A lot of that has come about in the last 4 or 5 years. There was just a turning point in my career, which we can get into about getting into guiding, where I was just blessed enough with my job and everything to just be spending a ton of time in the woods. Up in the Adirondacks is very vast. I haven't checked recently, but the last time I checked, they say there's an average of 7 to 8 deer in the Adirondack Park per square mile. So if you put that into perspective from outside of the Adirondack Park, that's not many deer at all. You know what I mean? So you really just, from my experience and where I started growing, is just time in the woods. And then becoming a guide, as you heard me talk about on Staggercast, I had to have a lot of restraint, obviously, because you're not out there for yourself, but you're out there for your client. But also, and I can get in this some more, but guiding deer in the Adirondacks and using my clients almost as like a scouting tool to go into new areas. I would try to get on mountaintops, find buck beds, bump deer out of their bed, especially bucks, and then try to find out where they go. And if they escaped one time through, maybe a small little push or drive that we were doing, I would make sure to know everything and then put my clients and or my friends in those positions to get deer. And that was kind of a really big strategy that I used, but it also helped me personally when I went out hunting to kind of find out how these bucks moved and use different areas and different terrain features to navigate through the woods. So, becoming a guide really upped my game as far as, becoming a good hunter myself when I got the opportunity to get out there.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great strategy to, utilize. And that's what, that's what guides do. Like they're scouting, they're figuring it out for the next client and for you the whole time you're out there. And, like anyone says, the best way to get really good at something is to start teaching it, because you start teaching yourself what you're doing. And by guiding, you're only going to improve yourself. And just like you said, dude, time in the woods, man. I can't tell you how many times during the hunting season, 4:00 rolls around, 4:30. I look at my phone, because at this time of year, I'm always up around that hour. I look at my phone and I say, I'm definitely not going to get a deer sitting or sleeping. I'm not going to get it if I don't go out. Get up and go out. And then eventually, like, I just naturally wake up at this hour because I do it so much. But I always have that, that guilt when you're laying in bed. It's like, okay, I can go out today. If I choose not to, I absolutely will not get a deer. 100% will not get one. So you're not going to get one here. So you got to get out in the woods, because, I'm a big fan of Todd Mead. He's been on this podcast. Shout out to Todd. I'm sure he'll listen to this episode. Anytime I can talk with him, I'm always stoked too. But he is a man who just always says, you got to be in the woods. You have to be in the woods. And that's, it seems like common sense, but man, especially here in the ADK where you usually don't see deer. It can be very mentally challenging to get yourself out there when in the morning, like, the odds that I'll get a deer are so slim and this bed is so warm, but you have to get yourself out there. And it is a challenge. It certainly is a challenge, to overcome mentally. Compared to if you're hunting at a farm, right, where there's you always will see deer, or most of the days you'll at least see things. Here, it's just a different ball game.
Oh, completely. I totally agree. And back to the whole mentality side of it, even last year, I'm not going to say I'm that type of guy that gets up in the morning every morning and just hit the woods hard. There's days where I lay in bed and I'm like, well, obviously I always go hunting, but you're just like, oh, no matter what, this is going to be a long day. You know what I mean? But recently, in the last 4 or 5 years, I just have this mentality, and I try to preach it and teach it, that no matter what, you're going to have a great day in the Adirondacks. No matter what, you're going to see beautiful country. And if you get the opportunity to kill a deer, that's just the cherry on top. I just try to fill myself with a bunch of confidence. And my wife will laugh at me if she hears this, but I tell her every day, I'm like, today's the day. I'm going to get it done. I'm going to kill a huge buck, and most days I don't. But if I don't tell myself that, you're going to beat yourself up, because if you're on Instagram, you're seeing different guys kill deer. You're like, oh my gosh, is it ever going to happen? And then in the last 4 or 5 years or 6 years that I've killed, pretty, very respectable bucks in the Adirondacks, a lot of them were on the last 2 or 3 days, and 2 of them were in the last hour. Wow. I mean, with the last hour of the last day of the Northern Zone, I killed 2 of my biggest bucks, and both were wall hangers. I got one on the wall, and the other one, when I shot it and he fell over, his antler fell off, and then I caped him out, went to go put him in the freezer, and his other antler fell off. So I'm just going to buy a skull mount and mount him up. But mentality in the Adirondacks is everything. And I try to preach that with my clients. It's a lot harder when people come up here from, say, counties down near the city or where most of my clients come. And, they come up here and they talk about, I see 10, 15 deer every time I go out. And, it's just hard to get it through their head that that's not what it's all about in the Adirondacks. You have to take it for what it is. But like we were talking about just a couple of minutes ago, time in the woods is everything. I try to tell my clients, just, if you want to kill a buck in the Adirondacks, keep booking with me. And, one day it will happen. You know what I mean? So. Yeah,
dude, you have the right mindset. Everything you're saying. And this is, you were talking about this on the Stagger Cast. And that's why I was like, he is the Adirondacks. He sounds like me when I listen to him talk. Like, it's a bigger experience when you come here. You're not just like in the woods. You're not just walking up mountains and hills and, fishing at lakes and paddling down rivers. Like, there is an experience when you're in the Adirondack woods that is, it's almost like out of body sometimes. It's just this totally different, unique place. And it's why people become so obsessed with this park, because it creates this totally different world. And, when it comes to hunting, to do exactly what you're saying, you see these, like, you follow any sort of Long Island page, and it's like they're absolute mutant deer that are down there. And anytime you walk out the door, you'll see deer. Same thing in Westchester, and there's just too many. But then you come up here, and if people have that expectation that you're going to get that type of deer that easily, or without, with maybe like a similar amount of work that you might have to do in those other places. But with this mountain adventure, it's like, dude, it's not going to be like that. On the best case scenario, on the very best day, yes, you will get, when everything aligns, like, for you, like, we're going to have to hear the stories about the deer in the last hour, because that just screams what Adirondack hunting is, like, right to the very end, and then you got it done. But as a guide, I'm sure you deal with people coming up here constantly, thinking it's going to be this magical backcountry mountain deer experience, but it can be, but most of the time it's a rugged, dirty, hard, cold day in the woods where you didn't see anything. And to get people's mind wrapped around that, and to, get them not getting down, because you talk so much about mindset with this, and how you have to be in the right state of mind when you're hunting here in the Adirondacks, because it can like destroy you. How do you kind of combat that with clients when it didn't go as they expected it to?
Like we were just talking about, that's a good question, but all I try to preach is, a lot of guys come up here. The guys I like guiding are usually the ones that, and I'm not saying this in a bad way, but don't have the money to do it every year. I know guys that came in ripped jeans, ripped shirts, wearing cheap camo, and they gave me a better tip than a guy that I had come last year that paid $22,000 to shoot a 220-inch deer in a farm that was caged in, and he complained about my prices. I mean, I just thought that was unreal to me. So, if there's a guy coming up here that I know is probably going to be a one-time client, but it usually is a very respectable guy, I will, in our time that we are together, try to just fill him with every tip and trick that I've ever learned in the Adirondacks as someone that absolutely didn't know anything when I started hunting. So if they want to come back up here and do it themselves, they know a little bit about it. And my hope at the end of the day is that I fill these guys' hearts with confidence and love for this area and respect for this area and a drive to get it done up here. I know many guys that have hunted their whole life, like we said, outside of the park, outside of the Northeast, and they kill a deer every year, but their dream is just to kill an Adirondack buck, and they've never been able to do it. So they might hire a guide the first time coming up here and then try after that, and it's not all about the money for me. You know what I mean? I was someone who had a couple people in my life that gave me some tips and tricks, but I really have a sense of pride about myself, where I've basically taught myself how to track, taught myself how to still hunt, taught myself how to sit. I've called in a handful of amazing bucks inside the park and outside the park. So, I just want to be that person that I never had, if that makes sense. I didn't have a father that took me out every year and every weekend hunting. And I was always very jealous of everyone else that had that, because it was not like, you felt weird trying to invite yourself onto those hunts. And there was definitely people that invited me to go hunting, but there just came this point in my life where I was the guy 10 years ago that was always trying to, go hunt with one of my best friends and his father and their group of guys, to now I'm the guy that people are nonstop, friends of mine that aren't even, that close to me, that are like, hey buddy, we should go out hunting this weekend. And it's like, they see my success from my social media pages, and between me and you, well, I'm saying it on the podcast, so they just want that too. You know what I mean? They want a picture of a nice 10-pointer Adirondack buck. And even though we aren't that great of friends, but long story short, people are reaching out to me to hunt when I was that person that was reaching out for everyone else. And now I just have that confidence in myself where, I'm going to go out and try like hell to get it done every year. You know what I mean? So it was a pretty pivotal moment in my hunting career to kind of see that happen. And then I became a guide, and when you're a guide, people are reaching out to you for your knowledge and experience. And it just really makes me feel good about myself. Starting a family, I just had a 1-year-old, and there's nothing more than I can wait for to get my son his first deer. And I can't wait to be that father that I wish I always had, you know what I mean? And I'm not talking down about my dad. He's the greatest man I've ever met in my life and one of the hardest workers, but he just wasn't an outdoorsman,
Sure. Now, I mean, the proof is in the pudding with what you've done when you go to your page. And in case you're listening, his guide service Instagram page is LaBar_guide service, LABAR. So you can go check that out and check out some of these just monsters that he's been able to get here in the ADK and other places. But you mentioned a lot in that I wanted to talk about. So your desire when people come up here is to create the experience, and help them to learn so that they can do it on their own, so that they're not dependent on you. And also because that's going to create confidence in them, and confidence, like you were talked about before, where every day you tell your wife, I'm going to get it. Today's the day. You need that. You have to have that. Otherwise, you're just not going to want to go in the woods. If you wake up in the morning, you're like, yeah, I'm not going to see anything today. Dude, it's hard to go out in the woods here. If you have that mentality, you have to make that change, that mindset tweak. And that, clearly you're doing that, and you're trying to do that for your clients, and you're trying to set them up for success so that they can come back and they have that experience that everybody wants. I mean, yeah, you're completely right. Everybody wants that big, mature Adirondack mountain buck because it is a trophy among all trophies. And
Right.
I can relate strongly with your sentiment about, your father and not going hunting. I know for me, I mean, my dad, I would also say my father is just like the greatest man I've ever known. But he's not an outdoors guy. He's from Long Island, and he did anything we wanted. He built us. He's a contractor, wood furniture builder. We had a skate park in our backyard that he built for us. He coached our little league teams. That's what we did. But the outdoors stuff, that just wasn't in my, it wasn't on my family's radar when I was a kid. It wasn't until I became an adult where it became my life's obsession.
So we have some stories in that.
Very much so. And just like you, I have different people who, when I started hunting, I've reached out to and have, taken me under their wing, and I'd learned a little bit from this person, a little from that, a little from this, going out, So I have a similar story in terms of, I guess we'll call it my hunting journey. But I want to hear from you. So now I know you're self-taught, minus, of course, everyone has people helping them out and tips and tricks. So take us through your story. So where'd you grow up? I know you're from the ADK. Where'd you grow up? How did you get into the outdoors? And then, take us through what your hunting journey was to, eventually become a guide.
Yeah. So my great-great-grandfather bought the piece of property that I live on right now in 1904. And then my great-grandfather started a business called Morningside Camps and Cottages. We have small rental cabins on the lake. And then my grandfather took over it. And then my father was born in New York, moved to Pennsylvania when he was 7, and then moved back to the Adirondacks when his father took over the business that he runs now and the property that I live on. My parents met in Nashville, Tennessee. My mom is from Arkansas. My dad's obviously from up here. And then we moved up here when I was 7 to take over the business. So I've been in the Adirondacks since 2002. I guess technically I'm not a native, but I have a long lineage of my family that's been in the Adirondacks. So I started hunting when I shot my first deer when I was 10 years old. My mom has 2 older brothers, and they are both diehard deer hunters. One of them is just strictly a gun hunter, and the other one's just strictly a bow hunter. And they got me into it. My grandfather and my 2 uncles that I was just telling you about, they bought me my first 243 when I was 10 years old, and hunting down there is just different. There's just a lot of deer, and they own a lot of property because they're both farmers, and they're both a part of a hunting club. So I shot my first deer down in Arkansas when I was 10 years old. It was a little button buck. And then I've got to go down there. Let's see. It's been like 20 years since I started going down there. I've probably gone down there 12 years to go hunting, and have killed at least a couple does or a buck down there almost every time, but maybe one time. So my hunting career kind of started at a young age when I was down there, but then again, it was just box blind hunting. There was nothing but be quiet on the way to the box blind and wait for the deer to come out and shoot them. So it was totally different ball game down there. When I was about 12 years old, I started hunting up here in the Adirondacks, and I went out with a couple of my dad's friends that he kind of knew from town and that lived around here in the town I went in. So that's kind of the people that I talk about that got me out there a little bit. But honest to goodness, from the time I was 13 years old, and I can't get in trouble for this anymore, but it was illegal for me to go out that young by myself. But I've been hunting since I was 13 years old in the Adirondacks on my parents' properties and surrounding properties. So started hunting in the Adirondacks when I was like 12 or 13. Killed my first doe when I was 13 on my parents' property, and then went out west, killed another one that year. And then ever since I was 13, there's only been 2 years that I haven't killed at least a doe or a small buck in the Adirondacks. And then the last 6 years, I've killed a buck that was over 3 years old, one that was 8 years old, which was one of the last day, and then two or three 5-year-olds, and then a couple, 3 and 4-year-olds. So been having some pretty good success the last couple of years. And do you want me to get in about how I got into guiding and all that?
Yeah, let's do it. So, I mean, so you're very much you wanted to start hunting. So you started hunting as a kid. And it's interesting that, like you said, it wasn't really like a natural thing in your family other than, uncles. So it's awesome that you were able to do it. And then you were able, you just pounded the pavement, quote unquote, even though the pavement in this situation is the woods.
Right. So imagine starting out as a 12 or 13-year-old trying to have success in the Adirondacks. You can only imagine how many highs and lows I went through before I actually started killing mature deer consistently. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Or any deer at that point consistently, especially, as a 12-year-old. I mean, it's hard enough to kill a doe, let alone, being a 12-year-old with kind of no real, constant guidance, especially at that point. It's not like you're texting, your uncle being like, hey dude, what's going on? How do we do this? It's like, you were very much on your own. Yeah. That's what I'm saying. Like it wasn't so easy. And there wasn't, the internet wasn't what it is now, with YouTube channel. It's like, nah, dude, it's just, maybe you get a hold of a book, one of those old books, I have like 2 of them here.
I still am not a good reader. So I wasn't the guy that went and read the Benoit books and read Hal Blood's books. And I watched one video about Joe Donito telling how to slow down when you kill the buck. And that's basically the only thing that I've learned is when he starts to J-hook, he's going to bed down. Other than that, when it comes to tracking, I've taught myself everything. Yeah. So, when I started hunting when I was 13, all I knew was gun safety. Check your safety all the time. And how I learned to become, to get to the point where I am today is I literally, and you heard me say this on Staggercast, I went out and made every single mistake, tried every different theory and idea that I ever heard on a hunting show or this or that, tried trial and error, and just kind of morphed my way into becoming a tracker, a still hunter, and a sitter, really. I know I get feelings when I know I want to sit. I get, when obviously when there's snow, all I'm doing is tracking. I'm not sitting there still hunting. And, and then when it's time to still hunt, it's time to still hunt. When it's time to sit, it's time to sit. And, so Sean, who was on Staggercast, he brought up a good point. He was like, do you ever think you had an advantage over other people who grew up just doing drives? Like an advantage on teaching yourself how to hunt and becoming who you are. And it wasn't until he said that a couple weeks ago when we did that podcast did I realize that there was probably some truth to that. You know what I mean? Although I was jealous of all these people that, grew up in a hunting family, in the end, I probably had a little bit of an advantage over the guys my age that just grew up doing drives. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that's just something that I wanted to bring up,
Well, it kind of forced you to have to, it forced you to have to figure it out for better or worse.
Right.
That's really what it that really ends up doing. And, again, for better or worse, like there's obviously pros and cons to each. Personally, I would never consider that situation. I would always say someone who grows up in a hunting family and is around that culture has it easier and will have more success faster. But there's a caveat to that. You are going to build a skill set, a long-term skill set that those other guys aren't going to have. And there's going to be, it's almost, I think I would say it's the kind of the equivalent of like the tortoise and the hare, whereas you're going to last longer. You're going to have a lot more battle wounds that boost your confidence compared to the person who kind of grew up around this and it's just normal. It's just like what you do because you have that earned confidence that like I had to figure it out myself. So, damn right I'm confident because I had to figure it out by myself. So there are pros, but I would still say that good on you for, persevering and, getting to the point where you are. So yeah, take us through, when did this turn into, more than just a hobby, but become, a career path? I know you've guided elsewhere as well. So take us through, the transition of when this is just something you love to do to let me take it one step further and become a guide.
So, let's go back to 2016 and 17. I graduated high school, went down to Arkansas and farmed for my uncle for 1 year. Realized that living down there is not what I wanted to do. My heart is and always will be in the Adirondacks, So long story short, out of high school, I really just had no direction on what I wanted to do, unfortunately. And that's all right because everything's worked out for me now and I definitely have a successful career. But fast forward to 2017, I was working up at Garnet Hill Lodge in North River. I'm sure some of your listeners know that it's a really reputable cross-country ski resort. And there was a gentleman by the name of Tom Cameron who got his pilot's license, and he grew up around here. He's only 4 or 5 years older than me, but I've never met him before until I started working there. And one day we were just doing some carpentry, redoing some of the rooms at the lodge up there. And he says, "Hey, you want to go to Alaska and make some good money?" And I was like, "Tell me about it." And he had a boss, and they did drop hunts for caribou, moose, wolf, and bear. So I ended up linking up with him, going to Alaska, and I was basically like a groundsman. I worked at the small, tiny airport on the peninsula of Kotzebue, Alaska, which is the most like northeastern part of Alaska, closest to like Russia, literally. It was like 130 miles above the Arctic Circle. And so I was up there for 2.5 months, kind of running the ground, prepping airplanes, gearing everything up, washing gear, getting food together for hunters that were coming in on big airplanes. And we would set them up and send them out. And we did some scouting from the airplanes. And there was times where he sent me out and actually left me in a spot in a tent so we could kind of like quote unquote save that spot for the next hunter flying in. So I got to do a lot of fishing up there. I never got to do any hunting. Unfortunately, my boss who I was working for up there is his business is Ram Aviation and his name is Brian Albert. I'm sure some people listening to this, at least one or two, will recognize the name. But I was I was working up there and had a great time, did a little fishing. He gave me an opportunity to go on a caribou hunt for free, literally, before anybody else showed up. And I could not find anyone to go with me. And it was 2017, I was only 19 years old. I was still very, very green. Well, maybe not very, very green, but definitely somewhat green in my hunting career. So for me to just all of a sudden go out in the Arctic Circle by myself was like, I just wasn't going to do that. You know what I mean? Had all the equipment, had all the gear. So I had a cool opportunity and I missed it. I'm going to get a hold of him one day and see if we can if I can work my way in there for a deal. But long story short, Tom Cameron was like, he's an awesome guy. I give him a lot of credit because it was still a part of my life where I was turning into a man. You know what I mean? And he's like, he really picked my brain. He's like, what do you want to do with your life? And I was like, man, I really don't know. I just love being outside. I could never see myself sitting inside and behind a computer and a desk and being white collar. I feel like I'm going to be blue collar for the rest of my life. He goes, you know what you need to be doing since you love hunting and fishing so much? You need to be handing a card to every one of these guys, and you need to start a guide service and hand every single one of these hunters that are coming in that have the money to do this and give them a card and start your own guide service. And I'm like, you know what? You're right. So I messaged my mom. She made me some cards because she has the printing machine to do that. Sent them up like a week later, and I just started handing out cards. And I didn't get any clients from those guys, but it was still kind of like a pivotal point in my guiding career. And then he said, you know what you need to do? There's this guy in Minerva, which is the town I live in. His name's Jamie Frazier of Adirondack Mountain and Stream Guide Service. A lot of people listening to this podcast will probably recognize him. He's been guiding in the Adirondacks for almost 35 years. And he said, give Jamie a call. He's been wanting me to guide for him. He's trying to bring someone on full time. And I think you guys can work something out. An hour later, I was on the phone with Jamie for an hour and a half. When I flew home, we had a meeting and I started guiding for him full time. So went, got my guide's license, started doing some taxidermy and a lot of guiding for him. And I worked for him for 2.5 years before I realized that I needed to keep advancing in my life and start making a little bit more money. So I entered the construction field and then started my own guide service on the side. Everything was fine there. We're still friends, and I'm actually going to be doing some guiding for him this year, just here and there to fill in some spots. I'll have a couple of my own clients come up, but yeah, so we're still really good friends. I started doing construction work, which around here is pretty good money, and then guiding on the side. So that's kind of the beginning of my guiding journey there, which then in turn, like I talked about, led to many, 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 many hours in the woods. And after those 2.5 years that I spent with Jamie guiding deer and then especially rabbits, he guides so much rabbit hunting that it's unreal, like almost every day of the season. And thinking back on it now, if anybody knows anything about Hal Blood, they know that he became a good tracker by tracking rabbits with a 22. And it wasn't until a couple years ago that all of that clicked. And when we were guiding rabbit hunting, I had to be absolutely excellent, if not professional, at finding fresh rabbit tracks. So that in turn helped me become, the tracker that I am today. So there was a lot of little things that clicked there, basically time in the woods, like we were talking about, that made a huge turning point in my career. And through that, became, where I am today with my success in the Adirondacks. So that's kind of a summed up story about how I got into guiding. So yeah. I'm still in the construction field. And the last 2 years, I was working for a construction company that would lay you off right around the 1st of November. So I was like, hey, that's perfect. And I just pick up side work and basically could hunt whenever I wanted and work whenever I wanted. So, long story short, the last 5 years, I've basically been able to spend a ton of time in the woods. I hunted 56 days out of the 60-something days in the hunting season last year. So
that is great. That is a very organic story, too, and how it all just kind of, one thing led to the next, which led to the next, and it's just very natural progression to where you are now. Also, Alaska sounds absolutely ridiculously awesome.
Oh
I
my,
definitely would love to get up there one day for that.
let me know, man. I definitely jump right on with you. We can make a plan and head right up there
Oh
and kill.
man, that sounds incredible. I mean, it just sound. I mean, you've seen, we've all seen the hunting shows and the YouTube videos and channels and stuff, and like, man, it just looks awesome. So that's incredible that you not just like. I mean, I've just watched videos. You've lived it. That's awesome.
Yeah.
And then you came back to the ADK, a young man ready for a young man with vision, and then you started working for Adirondack Mountain Streams, and that makes perfect sense. And then here you are now, an absolute stud. And talk about a perfect situation with your line of work, where you're, the slow season is the hunting season. How convenient.
Right.
Just perfect. Now, what you were talking about with rabbits, I've actually heard Hal Blood, huge fan. I have 2 of his books.
Right.
I've heard him talk about rabbits, and it makes perfect sense. But I was very surprised to hear you talk about how much rabbit guiding you've done. I didn't know that was even like a big ticket item for people to come up here to do.
Yeah, if I'm great friends with Jamie Frazier. If anybody listening to this podcast is looking to go on a deer hunt, a trout fish, a pike fish, and especially rabbit hunting, he has a lot of dogs, and he's done it for his whole entire life. And I hardly remember a day that we didn't come home with a rabbit, 2, sometimes 3 or 4. But the more guys you can get together and come up here, get a hold of Jamie Frazier at Adirondack Mountain Stream Guide Service, and I promise you will have a good time. But that's just one of those things too. It's pretty cold. Don't get me wrong. It's not just like sunny, warm type of hunting like your snow.
That's winter hunting. Yeah. It's cold days.
Snow through 2, 3, 4 feet of snow, but after the first couple of weeks, he has all his trails kind of packed down, so it's not terrible, trudging through there. But you're going to be standing there for a while. You're going to be cold. I recommend all wool. Cotton is death. Bring your hand warmers. Bring your feet warmers. Bring a thermosol full of coffee, and just enjoy listening to the dogs. It's a fun time.
Nice. I have there's a rabbit at one of my cameras that has forced me to up my cell phone plan with the camera, because I just have dude, the rabbit just won't stop all night long, all in front of my camera. I'll wake up in the morning and I have like 50 different photos of this one rabbit every night, dude. And so I guess I have to get an unlimited plan for this camera now because of this rabbit.
Drop your sensitivity too if you have the availability. That'll help you a lot.
Yeah, and then I figured I only pay for with some of the cameras. Some I just leave out there, but some I just pay for the season. So it's like, all right, I'll just pay the extra money, and because it's like you drop the sensitivity. It's like, what if I miss that picture that I needed, or what if I miss that like really nice photo? But yeah, that damn rabbit, man, costing me money, but that's cool. Very cool. Yes. If you guys are looking for a guide service, definitely check him out. I've spoken to what I assume is Jamie. Maybe it's somebody else on Instagram a few times. Yeah. Any Adirondack business, I'd like to send more business their way.
Right.
And very cool.
Look, I'm not trying to push all my work away, but like I said, I only take a handful of deer hunters a year. And I do a lot of investigating on my deer hunters. I check their Facebook out. I'm really good at telling if people are BSing or not. And I guarantee you, I turn down way more people than I guide. I'm very particular about my hunting spots. I've put too many hours into the woods to give away my hunting spots. And I'm upfront with everybody that's coming up here. I'm not guiding you so you can come here the next year and do the same hunts with your 8 guys you're bringing up here.
Mm-hmm.
And
yeah,
if that's your intentions, then I'm sorry, you couldn't pay me $5,000. I would turn you down. I wouldn't give away my waypoints on Onyx for any amount of money. I know that sounds so funny, but I hunt a lot of piss pounded public land. And some of the most piss-pounded public land that I hunt in the Adirondacks are where I'm shooting 120s, 130s, and 150-inch bucks. So, no matter how much pressure is there, if you know how to hunt the ground, you're going to have success either way. So if I'm bringing up guys and teaching them how I do my hunts and my strategies, it's just giving away everything I've ever built up in my guiding career.
Yeah, sure. Dude, so I'm scrolling through your Instagram, your guide service page right now, and there's just some absolute hammers that you have guided clients to. And and you've it's like absolutely wild.
I have a best friend of mine, Austin Williams, and then another good friend of mine, Griffin Allen. I mean, the hardest part about, bringing my friends to my spots and bringing clients to my spots is my friends and clients have shot bigger bucks than I shot in the Adirondack. But hey, that's, I still got a long ways to go. I'm 29 years old, and I got a goal set for some monster deer that if everything falls into line, I'm definitely trying to always let go of those younger deer. And I have nothing against anybody shooting younger deer. But it's just getting to that point in my career where I'm going to start trying to let 3-year-olds go. And that's really hard because they can be 100 inches in the Adirondacks, and 100 inches in the Adirondack is a trophy, but you aren't going to kill the 150, 60s and 170 Adirondack bucks that are out there if you're shooting 2 and 3-year-olds every year. So,
yeah. And you're definitely at that point. You also have a lot of turkeys on your page. Now, I know you have a bit of a soft spot for turkey hunting too. So you talked about it in the other podcast. So tell me about, what is it that you love so much about turkey hunting? Take me through
what I love so much about turkey hunting, and it's gone into deer hunting. I've called in some awesome bucks, using rattling, grunting, and using a bleat can. And everybody's always told me that I would love elk hunting so much because they know how obsessed I am with turkeys. But when it comes to turkey hunting, I had a really good friend of mine who was a lot older than me. He unfortunately 4 years ago passed away because of cancer, and he gave me a beautiful featherweight 280 Winchester bolt action rifle, 4 or 5 days before he passed away, that I shot an awesome buck with 2 years ago. And that's Steve Kutsikria. He is the one that started my hunting career. I definitely do a lot of things different. A hunting career with turkeys is what I mean. But I definitely do a lot different little things than he does. I call a lot less than him. And, but, I'm not saying I'm a better turkey hunter than he was, but he taught me a lot, took me under his wing, picked me up when I was 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 years old until I got my own license to drive. And he taught me a lot about turkey hunting. But I have, not bragging because I do it, but I have a lot of success turkey hunting. I call in probably 7 to 10 to 11 birds a year. I filled my tags every year, both tags, for, 9 or 10 years now, turkey hunting. And I'm not trying to give away all the secrets, but Adirondacks is, deer hunting is in the Adirondacks is, arguably the hardest place to kill a deer. But the Adirondacks, when it comes to turkey, is some of the more easier and most fun place to kill a turkey. I mean, not so much your high peaks region, but if you get down to where there's more towns and people, and turkeys hang out a lot around houses and stuff and in town. It's not like, like with big bucks, the deeper you go, the more turkeys they are. I mean, but there's definitely a ton of turkeys in the Adirondacks.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. I mean, I feel like every time I go in the woods, I hear them, especially early in the morning. I feel like I hear them at literally every single time I'm in the woods.
And if you're calling turkeys in the open hardwoods in the Adirondacks, I mean, there is just nothing like it. I do love calling it the couple of big bucks that I have called in. There's nothing more than an adrenaline rush than hearing a 200-pound live weight deer come crashing down through the woods looking for a fight. There's nothing like that. But second to that is having a big tom and letting them get to 11, 10, 8 yards in front of your barrel and rolling them right there. That's addicting.
Sure. Man,
So,
I'm just looking at the pictures on your page, and some of these deer are just like, holy crap, where are these guys? It's fantastic. Good stuff, dude. Good stuff.
Yeah.
Now, let's go through now. So we know that you are super successful. You're guiding clients here. So for people who have not hired a guide, they don't have the means to hire a guide. Let's give them a little, take us through a little 101. We'll do a little quick still hunting 101, then a little quick tracking 101, which are pretty much, most people know about hunting in a stand. So we'll skip that. We'll go still hunting 101 and tracking 101. Give a little tutorial on, okay, so you're coming up to hunt the Adirondacks. These are kind of the techniques that most people use. Take us through from your perspective, from your hard-earned wisdom and guiding experience. Give the listeners a little 101. So we'll start with still hunting. What would you do? What would you say? What are your tips you're going to give people who are coming to the ADK for the first time and they're going to try this different type of hunting that they're not used to?
Okay, so first off, what I would do when you're thinking about it is do your homework at home. I've done a lot of, teaching, turning myself into a hunter in the woods by just trial and error. But a lot of upping my game in the last 2 to 3 years are listening to podcasts on the way to work and home of how to e-scout. Onyx is one of my greatest tools I've ever used in the woods. That totally upped my game. And so anybody that's out there, it's $30 a year. Get yourself for the lower membership, not the premium. Go ahead, get Onyx. Second thing, start listening to some podcasts. Johnny Stewart, Bo Martonic, who I've done a podcast with. He's now working with Sitka. Great guy, good friend. I text him often. Do some e-scouting. And then find some state land. Find some areas that have hiking trails that you can hike up into. And then after that, when you find an area that you want to hunt, that I recommend, like I said, getting a state trail, easy to not get lost. Keep setting waypoints where the trail is, where you lead the trail, where your truck is. And then before you even head up there, what I look for in new areas is saddles. You'll have, and if you don't know how to find a saddle, I'm not going to explain it right now. It would take a long time. But look up some YouTube videos on how to find saddles. Try to find the predominant northwest wind. And all I'm talking about right now is locating bucks. You can go out there and still hunt the way I still hunt and walk around for miles, years on end, and not see anything. First thing you got to do is locate where the bucks are. I like to look at the bottom of steep ledges. Bucks like to bed on the edge of impenetrable terrain, so at the bases of ledges. And when you still hunt up to a ledge and you can get in the perfect position, and it helps if you know a buck is bedding there, but you also have to just kind of send it, make a waypoint, say that looks like a spot that Wesley told me about or this guy told me about, and just go up there and hunt it, investigate, look for a big blowdown that might have a buck bed on it. And then, check all these areas out. So first step will be trying to predict and find out where a buck is. And you can do all that research online. You can go to YouTube and there's videos on how to locate where bucks might be. And then, so as far as strategy, you're getting up there. Still hunting is something that's really hard to do in the Adirondacks unless it's raining, because there's a lot of trees that, foliate up here and drop their leaves. On a dry day in the Adirondacks, it's almost impossible to walk up on a deer. Last year was a good example. It was ungodly warm, super dry. You could not do anything but sit. And on the way into your, wherever you're going to sit, you're going to blow deer out anyways because of how loud it was. So it was almost impossible to do anything until the snow flies. Step one, locate bucks. Find a good area that looks good. Go up, check a saddle, and try to start finding some signs and just putting the pieces of the puzzle together. Hunting scrape lines, still hunting scrape lines is great. Cody Frazier, Jamie's son, he killed a very respectable buck with his muzzleloader the other day, just still hunting a scrape line. And a lot of times with scrape lines, is a good tip is that scrape lines are going to usually be on a bench or lower than the top of the mountain. Sometimes they're right across the top of the mountain. But 9 times out of 10, unless a buck is doing a big loop, he's going to bed over the scrape that he knows a doe is going to hit. So every time I look up and all of a sudden see a little licking branch snapped over, I just stop. I will stand there for a half an hour and look around, especially if there's a hillside up above me, because chances are, if it's the middle of the day, when we're hunting, that buck's going to cruise around at night and then cruise, in the mornings and then in the afternoons. But if it's in the daytime and you're still hunting and you see that scrape, pause. You know what I mean? Look around for a little bit, pull out your phone and then look at the terrain feature above it. And then if you think you might have already blown the deer out, or even if you didn't, go up and investigate. Get up on that bench that's above that scrape, or go to the top of the mountain where you're finding a scrape line. When I find a scrape line, I'll check it, look at it, throw up a camera if I want to. I usually 9 times out of 10 always have a camera in my backpack, especially if I'm looking in new places, and I'll always drop a camera. And then get up on the mountaintops. A buck I killed 2 years ago tracking this big heavy 7 that you'll see on my Instagram. He bedded when he went to bed in the morning, which was around 9 o'clock. He laid down. He laid on the tallest rock on the tallest part of the mountain range. It was a mountain range about 1.5 miles long. He picked the tallest part of the mountain. There was a rock outcrop on it, and he laid on the top. I find a lot of mature bucks bed way up on the tops of mountains. In the morning times, they're trying, at night after they cruise, they're heading back to their beds. As the sun rises, the thermals are coming uphill. They're going to want to bed on top of a mountain. So I'll usually go up, check a saddle. Sometimes there's a saddle that has a good runway coming through there, and sometimes some scrapes, and then either turn right or left on that mountain and, check some sign, try to find sign when you're cruising on the mountain. Another good tip about still hunting is don't ever get yourself, unless you're just dedicated to scouting, which I'm always scouting when I'm hunting, and it's hard to do both. It takes some time to really become that guy that scouts and hunts at the same time. But don't you get yourself into a situation where all of a sudden you're in such a thick area, you can't even pull up your gun and turn around. Because then what's the point? If you start walking along and you're in an area where there's a big buck, but it's so thick you can't even shoot 8 yards in front of you, what's that going to do when he's 20 yards in front of you and you just hear him go crashing out of there? So bucks like edges. They like to travel on edges, which is usually like you can look up on a mountain anywhere in the Adirondacks, and a lot of the times there'll be some green softwoods on the tops of the mountains, and then it turns into hardwoods as you go lower on the mountains, like say the lower 2/3. I love to cruise just inside the dark timber, so you're more in the shadows in the shade instead of out in the open hardwoods, and cruise along there, because a lot of times I've shot a lot of bucks on the upper 1/3 of mountains, and they're usually 9 times out of 10 in the early season, not the late season. Late season bucks will bed in the open hardwoods. They're tired. They want to be able to look around. But as far as their main bedding areas in the early season, they'll be in dark timber. When you're standing out in the middle of the sun and you're trying to look into the woods that are really dark, or you go and stand in the dark woods and look out into the field, like a field or an open area, you can see way better in the dark timber, So you just got to kind of remember all that. So I travel in the dark timber if I can. And then if it's usually thicker up on the top of mountains. So if you can travel in that thicker area, but be able to shoot downhill into that hardwood area, you just got to hope and pray that if you happen to, jump that buck when you're walking along the hillside or on top of the hill, he runs out into that open hardwood, so you can start laying the lead to him, if that makes sense. So finding saddles, finding sign, it's the Adirondacks, you might spend 10, 12, 20 days finding the sign of where a buck is in the area, and then that one day you kill him, but you got to put in that time to find him, unless you just get lucky like some guys do up here that just happen to stumble upon them and they run right out in front of them and shoot them. You know what I mean? So e-scout a lot before you come up here and waste a lot of time, because if you just decide, oh, I heard Wesley say pick a state trail, so I'm just going to walk up this state trail and then start walking around, you're going to be more frustrated at the end of the day than if you did your homework at night. Everybody has social media. We sit around on our phones at night, after dinner, before dinner. Instead of sitting down on your phone scrolling through Instagram, start looking in places you want to hunt up here. I mean, shoot, you're wasting time on your phone anyways. You might as well try, be e-scouting and planning for November, especially if you love hunting as much as we do, if that makes sense.
Absolutely, dude. That is, there is so much wisdom you just dropped. I hope anybody planning to come up here to hunt or already lives here and is going to hunt wrote down some fantastic notes, because you dropped some wisdom in the last 5 minutes there. That's some very great stuff. That's hard-earned wisdom as well. So I appreciate you sharing that. And then let's do one quick 101 of once the snow flies tracking. Take us through it.
All right. So once the snow flies, hopefully, I'm going to talk as myself, and hopefully you guys that are listening, hopefully you've done your e-scouting. Hopefully you've found some runways, found some scrapes, found some rubs. Late season, bucks up here are still traveling quite a bit, but they're tired, and that is great for trackers. Bucks up here, I mean, I've shot bucks at the end of the season that weighed 165 pounds. You can see their entire spine and count their ribs on the last day of season. A buck's up here. There was a 140-inch buck that was found 2 towns over from here, dead, bloated, and skin and bones, but had one of the, just a huge rack. And he did not have a bullet hole in him. He didn't have any sign of being sick. And everybody that I talked to said that deer literally just ran himself to death and piled over on the side of some hill. So these deer are tired. And a lot of the times when we do get snow, like last year we got a snowstorm, I don't remember exactly. I want to say between the 16th and the 22nd, which early snow is way better. They start rolling out of the mountains. They're coming out of the high peaks. They become more accessible, you know what I mean? Because you don't have to travel as far into the woods to find them.
Mm-hmm.
So long story short, bucks are tired. So what I like to check is staging areas before they go to deer yards. Sometimes if there's not a ton of snow, they won't be staging up yet. But if I'm going to go and try to find the biggest buck that I can find to track, what I'm going to do first is go to where I know there's good buck bedding. Like that buck, I'm going back to that story that I killed a couple years ago. He was checking doe groups all night long, and he got into a doe group. It took me, I don't know, I told this story on the Stagger Cast, but it took me a long time. He checked every single doe. They'll literally run themselves to death, but all they're trying to do is breed does. You know what I mean? They have that drive in them. So you're checking doe groups, the areas that there's does. And sometimes that's closer to town. Like, you don't always have to go way into the high peaks to the tallest, top of Whiteface to try to find the biggest buck in the Adirondacks. He might be down closer to town checking doe groups where he knows there's a bunch of does. So finding doe groups. If it's a new area, I would check a saddle, because the saddle is a low point in a mountain or an easy access point through a mountain range that's low, that they don't have to go crawl through ledges and cliffs to get to, if that makes sense. And check saddles, check areas that I know bucks bed, and then I'll try to, as I'm going into the woods, I'll try to cross runways, cross them lateral, perpendicularly. If they're lateral across the hillside, I, cross them perpendicularly. So check all those runways, see if there's a good buck track on them. I don't really go to where I see a lot of deer have like a rub line, but I'll more go to, like everyone hears, signpost rubs. So signpost rubs are really, really good for mature bucks. A lot of times bucks will lay signpost rubs in staging areas and in areas where there's good food sources, which correlates to, if there's good food sources, that's where the does are going to be. I mean, does are does. They don't travel for anything other than finding the best and easiest food they can get. A lot of times I try to hunt in areas that have acorns, and deer will literally eat under an acorn tree, plop down on the ground, chew their cud, get back up hour later, 2 hours later after they take a nap, and then go right back to eating acorns. So checking food sources, checking signpost rubs, like I said, that are usually near doe groups and food sources. And that's just some of the 3 or 4 things that I like to check.
Very cool. So now when you're on the track, take us through. Well, I mean, actually, no, we'll go to now have you tell the story because, it was in the winter, so you were tracking the buck. So we'll get a sense for you out there on the track in the snow as you tell the story. So tell the story, or whichever story you want, of the last hour. We'll call it the last hour buck. Your choice, which story is better. But tell us about the season as we wrap things up here. Tell us about the season, and then take us through that final day, all the way up to the final hour when you didn't give up, you persevered, and you shot the buck. So tell us that story.
Okay. If you don't mind, I'm just going to drop one more piece of wisdom before I get into
Absolutely.
the story.
Let's do it.
So as far as tracking, and this is something that honestly I've only got good at like 4 years ago, but I was always a still hunter. I hardly ever had time to sit. I would just go and go and go until I started jumping bucks and jumping deer. And then I go and investigate and learn. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
But it's the hardest thing for any of you out there that tree stand hunt or tree stand and still hunt. It is so hard to become a tracker. A deer tracker is unlike any other type of hunting. Unlike bow hunting, unlike sitting, you have to dress light, take as little of stuff as possible as you can possibly take. So you're light, carbine guns are the best, and you just have to go and go and go at the fastest speed you can possibly travel without wearing yourself out. And to be honest, like you see these guys, you'll end up doing sometimes 8, 10, 12. Rick Labby has days when he was younger, he's done 21, 25 miles on a buck track in a day. And so you have to be prepared for that. That's kind of rare to go 20 miles. Usually that would only be early season when the bucks are good. So my first recommendation to anybody getting into tracking is that you have to go hard on the track. You have to be good at identifying how old the track is, but you'll hear a lot of people say this. I would rather go all day as hard as I can and jump the buck than all of a sudden getting into good sign and putting the brakes on. I mean, you have to be, Mark Sheeran taught me a good way of putting it, and I've always done it, but first gear, second gear, third gear. You need to do third gear until you find a track, and then investigate how old it is, and then you do third gear until you think you get close. When you're close and that deer starts, making a J hook for some reason, or he does something out of the ordinary that he hasn't been doing, you put it in second gear. When that deer feeds, you're in his bedroom. You need to put it in first gear or half a gear. And really just the hardest thing, because you can get really cold and your hands can get freezing, is going 8 miles wide open as fast as you can go. Then all of a sudden he makes a J hook, feeds a lot, and then you're going literally one step every 2 to 5 minutes. That is the hardest part about tracking. But like I said, at the end of the day, I would rather jump that buck once or twice than slowing down as soon as he gets into a good area, because he might be headed towards his bed or headed to some food area. Then all of a sudden you see a fresh scrape. And then all of a sudden you see a couple rubs and you slow down. That's the biggest mistake a lot of guys do when they get on a buck track. So that's my just a little bit of wisdom before I get into a story, I guess.
Oh, it's great. It's great wisdom. And that's, that's been, as somebody who likes to run around the mountains, tracking, especially in the snow, it's definitely my preference. I have the most fun. I get the most fulfillment on those days. It's the most exciting because you're on a track. As long as you just keep going, you will eventually come across the buck. You don't always catch up, hours and daylight and whatnot. But I personally, as someone who likes to move, I'm not a big fan of sitting. It is my preference as well. And I find it to be an absolutely exhilarating way of hunting. And I've read, the Benoit's books. I've read Hal Blood's books. I'm like a sponge. I absorb as much information on tracking as I possibly can. So I appreciate it. And take us through your successful story.
All right. So, let's see. I got to pick one. Oh boy.
One of those final hour bucks, we'll call them.
Okay. So, I told the story of my 7-point on Staggercast. That was not a final hour. That was November 29th, though, and the end of the season was December 3rd, and he was a tired old boy.
Mm-hmm.
So,
close enough.
Do you want that track, or do you want that track where the deer fell over and his horn fell off?
I want to hear the one about I want to hear because I also want to hear kind of how your mind was. I want to hear one of the stories from the final hour of the final day, because there is something to be said about going until the bell rings. And that's a story that I want to hear.
All right. So, well, one of my big bucks was an easier track in the last hour. I shot him with 2 hours. I'm going to do the one that has a little bit more of a story to it. I mean, it only 8 minutes. So let's go back to 2000. I want to say 19 it was, 18 or 19. I had killed a nice 2-year-old 8-pointer early muzzleloader season, and we had quite a bit of snow that year. I was doing a lot of guiding, had some great success. I think I honestly I was guiding for Jamie, but I guided a lot with Jamie, and then I guided a lot by myself, and I had 3 people shoot a buck that year. And there's just a lot of snow. We got like 2 feet of snow November 7th. So whatever year that was, it was a ton of snow. Mm-hmm. And the deer started yarding up and coming out of the mountains. So a lot of big bucks will show themselves when the snow flies. And to start out the story, this will make it interesting. I was in a Snapchat group chat with a lot of people that I did not know. Some were from Iowa and Illinois that were friends of my good friend. And then some of them were kind of local. And then some were down outside of the Adirondack Park. I shot this buck and posted him in the Snapchat. And I had one of the guys that I had no idea who he was from Adam. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And he was like, no shit. He was like, he sent a trail cam picture of the same exact deer. And this deer has a very goofy, tall rack. He was a 6-year-old for 3 years. And he was a really old buck. He was 8.5 or 9.5 years old, the jaw said. But I was seeing him in town just after hunting season. And like I said, it was the last day of season. But he was showing up in town like a week before he normally shows up. There's someone just up the road, like a half a mile that feeds him. And he was out there all the time with a huge 130-inch 10-pointer. Anyways, when I shot that buck, he told me where his trail camera was. I dropped a waypoint on where he had his camera and where I shot this buck, and it was 8.7 miles away as the crow flies on Onyx. So walking distance, he went over 4 huge mountain ranges that went up to 2,400 feet in elevation. So all of that up and down, when you think about it, 8.7 miles as the crow flies, that's like 12 miles away from where his home range was.
Yeah, it's definitely, it's a haul.
It's incredible. Yeah. So I was having a depressing season. Obviously, it was like 3 days before the last day of season, and I went for a walk on my property just because I wanted to go see some deer. I kill some good bucks on my property. Austin killed a 201 pounder on an open weekend of muzzleloader a couple years ago, 2020. And then he killed that 153-inch buck 2 weeks later. So he had a good year. So I was going for a walk on my property, which, the town I live in is a pretty good deer yard. And I look down and I see this huge flat-footed buck. He was old. Like I said, almost 10 years old. I was like, no way. And I didn't go 20 more yards. I live on 87 acres, so it's not a huge area of land. I didn't go 20 more yards, and I looked up, and he was quartered hard away from me, almost dead away, looking back at me. And I was like, oh, my gosh. And he took off, and I took a shot at him. And he crossed the road and went over to a piece of property that I had permission to hunt that backs up to my uncle's land. And we ended up almost in state, but state land. But anyways, traveled on him. He went about a mile, and stopped in some like evergreens that were like 6-7 feet tall. And I mean, when he stopped in them, you couldn't see 8-10 yards in front of you. So I got close. He made no indication of slowing down. So I bumped him, gave him a half hour, then started going on his track. Got just almost to where I entered that green patch, and he blew again and started running. So I was like, oh no, there's a second bump in like 1 hour. Like, 1 hour. It took me 1 hour to catch back up to him again. Like I said, he went about a mile. So anyways, I was like, this is going to be a tough one. And knew he was an old deer, close to the end of season. Went on him for a ways, and he started heading up to this saddle that I know all these deer use when they come down out of the mountains and start heading into town. So I headed up towards that saddle, and right at the top of the saddle, there was 2 huge buck tracks. And I mean like huge buck tracks. And one of them was his, obviously. So I looked at the tracks, trying to analyze them, and they both were screaming fresh. So I was like, oh my gosh, what do I do, right? So I took the buck track that I thought was him. Obviously, they were both huge buck tracks, but I knew that this one buck was big because, like I said, I saw him. So I took the buck track that I thought was his. I didn't go maybe 200 yards, and I'm following the tracks with my eyes. I'm getting to where I'm coming up to the top of this hill where I crest it. And I followed the tracks with my eyes, and I looked up, and I see what I thought was like a big buck. And this is all in the matter of 3 seconds. But I was like, no way. No, it looks too big. This isn't the same. But it was just like a dark spot up on top of this hill, like 100 yards away. So I looked back down at the tracks. I looked back up at that hill. And honest to goodness, I've seen a lot of deer. I can judge deer pretty well. 140-inch buck, 20-inch spread, shorter tines, probably 8-inch G2s, 6.5-inch G3s. And he was a 10 or 12 pointer, heavy, dark horns. Turns his head and up over the hill he goes. So I'm like, oh my gosh. Ended up on a different buck's track, and he went over hill. So that was like 3 days before the end of the season. So fast forward to the last day of season, I'm beat up now. I'm like, it's just Adirondack hunting, like we talked about in the first 3 minutes of this podcast. I am just beat up. I'm wore out. I'm just, all that's going through my mind on that last day is, it's probably not going to happen. You know what I mean? This is the Adirondacks, right? I was like, this is probably not going to happen. So anyways, I was hunting closer to town. Obviously I'm a big woods hunter, and I hunt, I'll go in 3-4 miles in one direction, but I was hunting more towards town. We had a lot of snow that year. I knew there was bigger bucks around. So I headed into this one piece that was about, I don't know, a mile away from my house where I saw him the first time that year, right? And started off and found a good buck track. He looked really similar to, obviously, the one I was tracking the day before, and it ended up being him. So I went along probably about 2 miles, and he was making a loop back to where his track was originally. He wasn't going far. And I bumped him. And I didn't know that I bumped him, didn't see him, right? So then I went along again, and here I come to some 8 to 10 to 12 foot tall pine trees. And I was like, well, here we go again. You know what I mean? And he was standing right freaking in them again. So I get right up to the edge of these pine trees, and I hear him go. And I'm like, oh my gosh. And now we're encroaching. It was like 4:33 was, it was in the early 4 o'clock was sunset, and then you get a half hour after sunset, right? So yep. Sunset was like anywhere between, or legal light was anywhere between 4:30 and 4:50, somewhere in there. I'm not correct, and I could be off, so don't nail me to a tree about it. But getting to be around 3:30 in the afternoon, and I'm like, oh my gosh, second bump again. This deer's going, right? Because I never caught back up with him the first day I tracked him, but that was because I took the wrong track, and by the time I saw that deer, it was too dark to pursue him anyways. So started off on him again. I gave him a half hour, and that deer, from the first time I bumped him, he went a little ways, and then I bumped him the second time. He only went 200 yards. That's how tired he was. So I crept out through just the other side of this pine thicket that was about acre and a half, where it was an old log header. So maybe it was just an acre. And it was an old logging header that grew up. I went through, and it was just kind of like a pine grove. It wasn't very thick, but it was probably 60, 70-year-old pine trees. So they were about anywhere from 10 to 12 inches in diameter. But there was a lot of space between them. And I crept through there, and I knew that because from the first bump to the second bump, he didn't go too far, just like he did kind of the first time. He went a little longer the first time. But I just had a feeling he was there. So it was just probably not quite second gear, not quite first gear, but probably 1.5 gear. You know what I mean? So I'm kind of taking a step every 15, 30 seconds. It's about 4:20 in the afternoon.
Yeah, let me pause. Let me jump in real quick. So
yeah,
let me ask you, what's going through your head here, knowing that the clock's ticking here, it is now or never, because it could easily be the time that makes you make a decision you wouldn't normally, because not only is it almost the end of shooting light, it's almost also the last day. Like this, it's your chance. So what was going through your head before you continue after the deer?
I'm going to tell you right now, and this is the way I got on that big 7-pointer. I said, this guy's dead. Just like I wake up every morning and tell myself that, even though 90% of the time you don't come back with a deer. After that second bump, I knew he was tired. He didn't even run. When he was stopped in that pine thicket on the second bump, he went 30 yards and then started walking again. Mm-hmm. And I was like, so that's when I hit the brakes. I was like, this deer is gonna die. And then even if I didn't kill that deer, because I'm talking, I had like 20 minutes left to get this done.
Yeah.
It was very dark in that pine grove because the pines were somewhat spread apart, but still because of the canopy, it was very like shadow-like in there. And then it was cloudy out. So not only was it like 15, 20 minutes before, after sunset, it was also cloudy out. So that just makes it way more darker. You know what I mean? And so I'm creeping along, and he had one of the whitest racks I've ever shot on a buck. And I took a couple steps, and just like Joe Donito says, when you're in first gear, he says, when you're out there and you are looking down this lane and you can see 30 yards, 40 yards, 60 yards, you take one step and all those shooting lanes change. You know what I mean?
Sure.
So I took a couple steps, right? I was going just to kind of hurry it up. I probably went 30 yards in first gear, but I wasn't taking a step every 5 minutes. I was taking a step every 10, 15 seconds because I knew I had no time. And I took a couple steps, and I looked out there, and he was broadside at about 70 yards, and he took 5 steps and stopped where I could perfectly see his neck. And I shot him about 8 or 9 inches below his jawbone, and he dropped right there. And I was just like, almost fell to my knees because it was just like, I'm getting choked up telling him the story because it was just like, you hunt your ass off all season. And it was just like, I almost think I went to my knees when I shot him because it was just like all that weight of watching people kill deer all year. And you're just like, comes down to the last day and you're almost walking out of the door without that confidence, and a lot of time that happens to me, we talked about in the beginning of the podcast, I leave every day going, it's happening. It's happening. You hunt 30, 40 days out of the season and you haven't killed a buck yet. And you get to those last days, even myself as a confident hunter, I'm like, I don't leave the house with that much confidence because you're like, what are the chances, right? Mm-hmm. But after the last 6, 7 years where I've killed, 2, 3, 4 bucks, 3 or 4 for sure, right in the last 2 or 3 days, I have a little bit more confidence now. But, this is, 4 years ago now. I was just getting really into where I was getting consistent success. And I was like, I don't even know if this is going to happen. And I shot him in the neck, and I didn't see him run, and I knew he was piled up right there. And I went over there, and he had one antler, and he was my oldest buck I've ever killed. He was probably, I think I remember, he was probably 168 dressed or something like that. Short, stubby deer, probably going downhill, not as much weight as he was 2 years previous, but just an awesome, goofy Adirondack buck. And even though he was 8-9 years old, he only scored 70, 80 inches just because of his rack was so goofy. I'll send you a picture of him when I'm done. I don't know if I have him on social media, but I probably should post him because it's a good little story. But yeah, that's my last hour buck.
Yeah, that's great, dude. I can relate to, I remember, it took me multiple years to get my first deer, and it was the same type of thing, nonstop, out and out and out. And social media is social media, and it's just it could be heartbreaking watching people have success over and over and over. And it's like, you're just hammering and pounding. And I remember when I shot my first deer and watching it drop, I felt a physical release, like a pressure valve, but I of it, both emotion and the weight off your shoulders. Like, okay, right. It finally happened. And I can relate very much to that feeling of feeling physical when, you watch the deer drop. It's an amazing story. Absolutely fantastic. How was the drag out?
Oh, to be honest, because like I said, he wasn't, too far. He was in the deer yard is what I'll say. Mm-hmm. And, he wasn't on state land 2 or 3 miles back. I'm not going to sit here and brag like he was some big, obviously he came from 9 miles away, and I'm not going to give away this hunting area, but he was down this road that's 15 miles long, that's surrounded by different patches of 30, 60, 70, 10,000 acre patches of state land. He came from the middle of nowhere. So he was a big woods buck, but I was probably 400 or 500 yard drag, which is nothing compared to a lot.
That's great. That worked out real well, especially at that point. It's nighttime now and it's dark and the season's over, but you have that high, but that's great.
Yeah. It was almost it was so down to the last moment that yes, I was having a huge reaction, but I was like, you sucker. You put me through the ringer. I've known about you for 3 years. So it was a deer I had history with, 2 years prior that I was trying to hunt him. But obviously I was hunting for a deer around here that was living 9 miles away,
Sure.
So it's some people, kill deer, and it's well, that deer came from 10, 14, 15 miles away. And, but I was almost so tired out that my reaction was quiet, but the emotion of all of it was just so real. You know what I mean? And anybody out there who hasn't done any big woods hunting, I just encourage you to do it. I want everyone to experience it at least once in their life. And shooting a deer up here is unlike anything I've ever experienced. And I've hunted in a lot of states and done a lot of hunting in my life. And I've shot a 155-inch deer down in Arkansas that just came running right to me because my dad missed it. And yeah, it was adrenaline rush. I shot him running full bore through the woods, but it was nothing like shooting a 3-year-old buck on the track up here that only scored 80 inches or 60 inches. There's just something about New England hunting that will become addicting to you, and there's just nothing like it. So that's all I got to say. I hope everyone listening gets a chance to do it.
Well, Wes, it's been a pleasure having you on the podcast. And I want to say the morning that I shot my buck with my bow this year here in the ADK, I was listening to your episode of the Staggercast. So you brought me some good luck that morning, and listening to you talk about hunting in the Adirondacks, and then I shot my buck that that morning. So I appreciate the good luck you brought me that day.
Absolutely.
And it's great having you on the show.
Yeah, thanks, man. I think we should get together. And you're from Lake Placid. I've always wanted to hunt the High Peaks region. I have hunted technically the High Peaks region, but south, part of it and all that. But
yeah, dude, it'd be great to get together.
Go kill one up there, man.
Yeah, it'd be awesome to get together. So let's make that happen. And before we wrap things up real quickly here, there's 3 questions I always like to ask every guest that comes on the show. So I'm going to ask you 2. Question number 1, what is something unique to you that you always have in your backpack, whether you're in the woods, whether you're hunting? What's just like a fun fact, unique thing that you always have to have with you when you go in the woods? And there's no wrong answer either.
Yeah, this is a good one. I think you're going to love it. So like I told you, my one of my best friends, Steve Kutsakria, who taught me how to turkey hunt, I don't even know if we ever deer hunted together, but he was a big upland bird guy. And then obviously we turkey hunted together. When he passed away, he got cremated, and his wife ordered me a necklace that's probably an inch long. And it's a shotgun shell, not a real shotgun shell, but it has his ashes in it. So that thing always sits right in the pocket that's in front of my heart, and I never hunt without it.
That is great, dude. That is why I ask this question. You'd be surprised, the more, I've obviously heard everybody answer, and there's so many times where you get that type of answer and like no one would ever know. So that's why I love to ask that question. Sometimes you get, there's like fun, weird things people like to eat. And then there's some super emotional things like that. And that's why I like to ask that question, because it's just a beautiful thing. And the next question, what do you think it is about the Adirondacks that makes it such a unique place? Whether that's to live, whether that's the land, whether it's to hunt, what makes the Adirondacks unique in your mind?
Just a couple of things. I'll make it short. One is the challenge. A lot of people, like I say, a lot of people might not agree with me. I've hunted a lot of New England. I've yet to hunt New Hampshire, Mass, and Vermont, but talking to many, many hunters, I've only heard one person say that they think that the Adirondacks isn't the hardest place to kill a deer. So it's that sense of pride and the challenge behind it. And then also from a guiding standpoint, as far as history goes back, from what I've heard and what I've read, the first guides ever to guide people hunting and fishing came from the Adirondacks. And that was like Teddy Roosevelt's guide, Henry Ford from Ford Motors, all of those people from the Rothschilds and the Rockefeller family. They used to all have places up here, and used to get guided. And from what I've heard, I may be wrong, but everything I've read and heard from people, the first guides came from the Adirondacks. So for me to be a licensed guide, there's just a little bit of sense of pride there. And I think it's really cool to, have that license and have that accomplishment.
Absolutely. And as a fellow guide as well, I can relate to having that sense of pride. And I'm pretty sure the term vacation was coined in Lake Placid.
It is.
And so, it's exactly what it was. These elites, they escaped to the woods to unwind, and that's what people did up here. They guided those people. Yeah. So it's been a tourist attraction ever since. So I can relate to that, though. I hear stories, I read stories. I'm kind of like obsessed with Adirondack history, and I hear stories of Bill Nye and Old Mountain Phelps, and I'm just like, God, these guys are legends. These are awesome, and it's so crazy. It's like, I'm sure if you were to tell Old Mountain Phelps back in the day, like there's going to be people, centuries from now that think you're just like the coolest badass ever. He'd be like, what are you talking about? I'm just like this dude who goes in the woods. But hey, that's how I see it. I work in the film industry, so I'm around Hollywood actors any day I'm at work. And to me, I don't I don't care at all about any of them. I would kill to talk to Verplank Colvin or Old Mountain Phelps any day over any sort of, celebrity in today's society. So as a guide, and that's one reason I wanted to, I got my guide's license and I started guiding, because there is a history there to doing that here in this park. It is a sense of pride. And it's great kind of carrying on that legacy. And my last question for you, Wes, why do you hunt? What is it that gets you, and why do you hunt in the ADK? Like, what is it that gets you out year after year and during those seasons, day after day, when it's hard? What gets you out there?
You know what? I think it's just, first off, I love venison. I'll start with
Amen.
that. And I've just gotten into processing all my own meat, so I love the camaraderie of getting with friends, grinding meat and stuff like that. But honestly, it goes back to, I've killed all my biggest bucks by myself. But when I do it, I'm like, because I've never, just to go back a little history, I've never killed a deer sitting in a drive. Never have. I've killed them being the driver or the pusher or whatever. But I just think it's the challenge, you know what I mean? And the camaraderie with the people that I get to hunt with. I love guiding people and seeing the looks on their face when they kill a deer. And it's the appreciation that people have for me, for my hard work of becoming who I am as an outdoorsman. My wife got her first deer last year on the property, and just her love of that and seeing her first deer, getting other people their first deer, and just being appreciated for, all, my hard work and all that. And then the camaraderie with friends. I have a lot of friends that we do a lot of, obviously, big backwoods deer hunting, 4-hour long drags with 4 of us that we did one last year. We had a huge long drag, and it's just all the things about New England hunting. It's just more special than shooting a deer on private land out of a box blind and being able over a corn pile and being able to drive the side-by-side to it like I've done in Arkansas. I kind of grew up that way, and then realized I didn't get as much excitement than I do shooting a deer in the Adirondacks. So camaraderie, everything revolved around processing the deer and then sitting around a table with my family, enjoying the meat after the harvest. So it's a few different things. It's not just one thing.
No, it's all part of the equation. It's all what makes it such a great experience. And you ever want to process deer, dude, you come up to me. It's usually me by myself on my kitchen table, cutting the deer up. So you ever want to, yeah, you come on up.
Well, if I can, I'll definitely help you.
It's always me. Just sometimes I can get my buddy Josh over. Sometimes I can't. And most of the time it's just me sitting on the kitchen table. But dude, there's so much to it. And, for any of you listening who don't hunt, and if you're still listening to this podcast and you don't hunt, I commend you for sticking with us this long. There's just something that is hard to describe and hard to explain to someone, like the different emotions and how different your mind can be, and the different emotions that happen within, like, we'll just say like a few minutes from when a deer walks in, and then your heart starts pumping like you wouldn't believe. And then you shoot, and then you have that, burst of energy. And then the wonder, did I get him? And then,
Right.
when you go, you eventually go, start walking to see if you shot the deer. Sometimes you wait a half hour, sometimes you wait 2 minutes, but then with that emotion, when you walk up and you see it laying down on the ground, dude, it is hard. I mean, I'm getting chills even just saying it to you. It is hard to describe to people who have not experienced it. And it's just it's a beautiful emotion.
You're getting me all jacked up, and I can't touch on enough of the amount of mixed emotions that go into killing a deer up here. I mean, I guess it can be the same, in other places, but when it comes to New England and how hard you work for deer and all the emotions coming together, and so many people are like, you deer hunters are sick, but there's also a sense of not remorse at all, but like a little bit of like sadness that comes over you. And that's not a good word to use, but like when you finally get up to that deer, you're just like, thank you. You know what I mean? Thank you to that and, I'm not a great example, but I do believe in God, and I do consider myself a Christian. So the amount of the amount of gratitude I have for God allowing me to live in this beautiful world and country and go out and hunt these deer. And, I believe he's always with me when I'm hunting, and he's in control of my life. And obviously I can make decisions, but I feel like we have a connection out there. And I'm just, I thank Jesus and my family for, sacrificing me to be away. And there's just so many things to be thankful for when you kill a deer. I mean, the day I kill a deer and the few days after it, I feel like I'm such a different person than that person who's hunting really hard to get to that point. I mean, I know I probably didn't explain that a great way, but for those people that understand what I was saying, you get what I'm saying,
Absolutely, dude. I appreciate that. I too am a sinner saved by grace who needs a lot of grace in my life. So I love everything you're saying. And this has been an awesome conversation. I really appreciate you coming on the podcast. We went long, but it was like, dude, this is a great conversation. Let's let it rip, because I don't get to do a lot of hunting episodes throughout the year. So it was a fantastic chat. And where can people find you online, Wes?
You can find me online. My personal Instagram is WesLab15. It's the same name I picked when I started an AIM back in the day. I've been thinking about changing, but it's the first 3 letters of my first name and the first 3 letters of my last name with 15 behind it. I have the link on my guide service page to my personal page and vice versa. And my guide service page is LaBar_guide_service. And I also have a Facebook page. All the videos and pictures I post go to Facebook and Instagram at the same time. So if you don't have Instagram, you can find me on Facebook. I don't check my email a lot, so it's just a bad habit. So if you're trying to get a hold of me, Facebook Messenger or Instagram is the best way. And then I'll give you my personal cell phone number, which I think my cell phone number is on my Facebook page too. So texting me and calling me is the best way to get a hold of me. If you are looking to do a hunt, like I said, I can't guide everybody who asks me to hunt, but I will take those people that I think are ready for it and that would be really appreciative of killing a deer up here. Like I explained before, I don't take every hunt that I get an inquiry about, but if we can make it happen and you sound like the right candidate, I'll be happy to guide you. So,
all right, great. Well, we're going to wrap this episode up right there. It's been a lot of fun talking to Wes about hunting here in the Adirondacks. It's just an absolutely magnificent and rugged place in the woods when you're out there with a bow or a rifle and you're just becoming one with nature out on the hunt. There's a lot of crossover. There's just an unbelievable amount of hikers who listen to this podcast who also hunt, and you all understand how similar the two are and how it's all about the Adirondack Park bringing that adventure to you, whether it's trekking poles in your hand or a rifle. Anytime you go in the woods here in the Adirondacks, you're going to come out a better person. And it's just a fantastic time of year, here in November as the hunting season kicks up. And, snow is going to be flying. Seasons are changing. It's a great time. So thank you all for listening to this episode of the 46 of 46 podcast. I really appreciate it. Check out 46of46.com. I have a book for sale if you want to hike the high peaks. I have a guide service you can check out there. Once again, that's 46of46.com. If you like the show, please leave a rating and review on Apple Podcasts. I very much appreciate it. And check back on Fridays for new mountains, new stories, new guests, and new episodes right here on the 46 of 46 podcast. Remember to always leave no trace, do the rock walk, and if you carry it in, carry it out. And good luck to all my fellow hunters this November.